Hello, we're getting started right now. Again, tonight's program will be Halalify your financial life, building a halal nest egg from childhood with Brother Aslam Merchant, inshallah. Without further delay, we'll give him the mic, inshallah. Bismillah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Today, the topic is very important, but most of us don't think about it. So, sorry about the audio-visual connection, because I was more concerned with there are people who called me from outside, Mariam and other places, even out of town, that they wanted to watch it. So at least they can hear what I'm saying. All right, so when we talk about finance, we don't think it's possible. Some people have very weird views about it. It can't be done. Just do everything that's available in the world. And there is a whole industry that has evolved over the last 30, 40, 50 years. Of course, we're not competing with the commercial finance, which has been around for at least 500, 400 years. But with evolution of these systems, we have opportunity to invest and build up our wealth and manage it in a halal way. And usually it's better because it's based on Islamic principles, which we will cover. And usually the performance and everything is better when you deal with Islamic instruments. So we need to always know that the Quranic injunction, why we talk about it, and we always use a simple ayah, "Udkhulu fi silmi kafa," that enter into Islam completely and perfectly. So we need to keep that in mind, that whatever we do in our lives, we have to do it completely. You don't leave this part out or that part out. So besides traditional worship, every aspect of our life should be in accordance with Islam. And that applies to our financial lives also. And if you, I think that didn't work. If you do that and inculcate in your children, who usually have no idea what Islamic finance is. Like I said, some people don't even believe in it. Well, you have a right to believe whatever you believe, but if you put an effort, there is a way to do everything Islamically. Prophet ﷺ said, "The wealth is like green and sweet. Whoever takes it without greed, Allah will bless it for him. But whoever takes it with greed, Allah will not bless it for him. And he'll be like the one who eats but is never satisfied. And the upper hand is better than the lower hand. So it's always better to have wealth that we can give out instead of collecting zakat and so on." So now coming into the main topic, what makes up halal wealth? What does that mean? Some people say, oh, we shouldn't be looking after wealth building or anything like that. There's nothing wrong with that. The word in the Quran, of course, proper Arabic is called sarwa and so many other words. But the main one word I want to remind you is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala called it khair, which means good. The wealth is called khair, which is a good thing to have. We work hard to earn halal incomes, do kind of job we do, kind of businesses we do. But when it comes to financial affairs, we forget about it. We need to learn about this and also educate our children about halal wealth so they grow up to achieve good in this life and hereafter. In Surah Furqan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we're taught that a dua in which we're asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our kids become leaders. And having halal everything is a prerequisite for leadership. So if you want your children to grow up and be leaders of the ummah and be successful in the hereafter, you need to make sure they're on the halal path as much as possible. I know living in the West is difficult. So what are some of the principles of Islamic finance? Well, there is no fraud or deception. You're honest with all the dealings. That's first thing. And the one big thing which is very hard to do, but becoming easier, is prohibition of usury or interest. We need to avoid getting involved in interest dealings as much as possible. And we'll talk about that in a little bit when I go through. We need to be honest in customers' dealings. You don't want to hide. Like here, you go to a store, the price is usually written, and you pay that price, unless you negotiate it down somehow. Most stores, you just pick up this. But in Eastern Muslim world, they never tell you what the price is. The guy will tell you whatever price he wants to collect, and you basically have to believe him. That's not the way it should be done. It should be clear. Same price should be given to all people. In any kind of agreement, partnerships, whatever business you do, there should be due share. There are rules in Sharia about how partnership agreement should be made. Whoever puts in 50% should be getting 50% of the profit, and so on. And there are some variations, of course, but we should be clear on that. And if you are not clean on your financial life, then your dua is not accepted. So we need to make sure if our duas are not accepted, that means we might be doing things that are not halal. Now, is it possible to do halal finance in modern society? It is very difficult to operate in the modern economy without dealing with financial institutions. Everything you do with more and more things going to digital world, you can't stay out and just deal in gold or even paper currency. We have to deal with financial institutions. It is hard to avoid, we understand that, haram money, but it is doable. If you set your mind, you can do it. Just like most people now, at least coming to the masjid, they prefer to go to a restaurant that serves halal meat. It wasn't possible when we came to this country. There was very few places that you could get to. So if somebody wants, but now it's almost anywhere in this country, at least Western world, you can find a halal place and you can go there. Same thing with the halal finance. If you want to do it, it can be done. Now, we get asked questions about who decides the ratios and what is halal and what's haram. That was not mentioned in the Quran and Sunnah. Well, the scholars derive their opinion based on Quran and Sunnah. And if something is not clearly mentioned, they go back. They go back to the Quran and Sunnah and come up with what they call qiyas, or analytical reasoning, that if this was done in the Prophet's time, how this will be done now. So they drive, just like a court decides their any decision they have to make, they go back into the precedents, how it was done. So things I'm going to tell you, some people question, what is written in the Quran? What is in the Hadith? Well, everything was not mentioned in the Quran. It just points out things. And then you eventually, excuse me. One example that's given is when Prophet ﷺ arrived in Medina, economy was controlled by the Jews. And, excuse me just a minute. Maybe this will help my cough. So our principle is operate in halal ways. Let the other people do whatever they do. So when you're dealing with a bank, once things in your control, you do it the Islamic way. The bank does it, whoever owns it, we leave it to them. Well, that's what Prophet ﷺ did in his time, because the economy in Medina was for Jews, and he did not tell them to change their ways. So this is how we do it. You do whatever you want to do. Now, first thing comes to mind is, can we deal with banks? Of course, who would not deal with the bank? You get paid into your bank. You spend your money from the bank. The banks, we know that generate profits by lending your money to the people on interest. But you're not collecting their interest. Bank account is a loan that you're given to the bank. Bank accounts are needed to carry on our lives, regardless. It is permissible because the scholars call it darura, the need. The need is there, so you have to do it. If there was full Islamic bank, there's only one that I know of in California, and I don't know how Islamic they are. But if the economy was based on Islamic principles, then you would deal with them. But we're dealing with Chase and Wells Fargo and so on. So this is the need for help. So you do as much as possible to avoid interest and so on. It's very hard to have an account now which doesn't have interest, but try to keep that balance to what you need. Don't collect like hundreds of thousands of dollars in a typical checking account. So your interest that they give you is minimal, and you can donate. Scholars say that if you collect money on interest, end of the year, donate that to charity without expecting any reward. Just give it to any charity. So it's not added to your wealth. And we should not be taking loans from the banks based on interest, but there are alternatives available. I know it's not possible all the time. So you do what you want to do, but this is what the scholars' opinion is. Next thing we have is credit cards and debit cards. And of course, everybody has those. Use them for convenience, but pay off your balance. Don't like accumulate and you end up paying a lot of interest on that. Don't allow accrual of interest because it's just you're going to be paying interest, which is not allowed. Some credit cards charge you annual fees. That's allowed because you're paying for a service that the card provides us. Fixed withdrawal charge at ATM machine is permissible. Sometimes when you use a machine to get cash out, they charge you. As long as it's fixed, it's okay. But if it's based on a percentage of amount of money, then according to scholars' opinion, that should not be happening. I don't know how that happens, but in some cases probably it is based on how much you withdraw. Usually the $1 or $2 or $3 withdrawal. Credit cards, we get points these days. Every credit card gives you some points that you can use to buy other things and so on. This is a reward for the bank gives you for doing business with them. According to scholars, that's acceptable. That's halal. It's not. Some people think it's interest, but it's not interest. It is something the bank gives you because you are giving them business. Debit cards are also okay if there is no interest accrued in that. If there's some money you're taking out of your bank, then it's okay. Sometimes they give you gift cards or whatever. Those are also permissible. There's nothing un-Islamic in those. Now coming to when you have money and you want to build a nest egg, what are the screening guidelines? There are several, maybe 4 or 5 different organizations around the world which set these guidelines. They're slightly different from each other, but majority just like there are schools of thought in fiqh, Hanafi, Maliki, and so on. There are different organizations. The best known one is called AOFI. It's Islamic Organization of Islamic Financial Institutions based out of Bahrain, and most Sharia compliant instruments follow that, but sometimes they have their own other ideas also. So we avoid, when you're investing or building wealth, avoid haram businesses, riba, that is interest like banks, insurance companies, gambling outfits, pornography, intoxicants, pork. You don't want to invest in companies which are doing this. Interest income should be less than 5% of gross revenue. Now, again, people ask all the time, where is this in the Quran? Well, this was not possible. This is the only way we can invest or buy a share of a company because every company has some dealing with interest. What we're saying is as long as they're making this minuscule amount, which even we get it sometimes from bank account. So as long as it's less than 5%, which is just something you can give in charity, you can buy their shares, you can buy their stock, invest in them. But if they're getting like 30% or something in interest, it happens also mostly in the cash-rich businesses like airline companies. Usually they're not halal because they collect so much money in fees for ticket prices, and they don't reinvest it right away. So they tend to accumulate a lot of interest. And that's why if you go to screening guidelines, you will find that that's not happening. Those companies are not halal. Also, the interest-bearing debt should be less than 33%. Some say 30%, some 33% of total assets. The reason is we want to make sure the company is operating to do business, whatever they're set up to do. They're not doing business with borrowed money. It should be equity finance. And scholars looked at it all over the world. They said, if you go below 1/3, then it'll be very hard to find companies which do. So they've allowed that up to 1/3 of debt is fine. Other 2/3 should be whatever, it should be capital. So they're not operating out of never worked. Another requirement is the account receivable should be less than 49%. Again, this is another guideline they follow. Now, coming back to one of the topics I said, how to build halal nest egg for children. What happens is we don't think about children most of the time until they need the money. It's advisable to do things for children the moment they're born and so on, because there are many ways you can do that, and then when they start their own life, get married or have children or go to college and so on, it would be nice to have some money saved up for them. Now, there are many opportunities, which I'm going to go through quickly. 529 plans. Some of you might have heard of that. How many people have heard 529 plan? Okay, at least somebody. Okay, those are state-sponsored plans. Only problem with them, first of all, they're tax advantage. You don't get a tax break when you invest in them, but the growth is tax-free, and withdrawals are also tax-free. So if you put $1,000 in it, whatever it became when the son or daughter goes to college, that money you can withdraw and pay for the college without having to pay any tax on that. That's a good benefit, but they tend to be not halal. The reason being, the states put together a package. The states put together a package, and you can choose among them different packages, but it's like any other fund. The fund may be partially halal, but not all the time. Okay, good. The screen is working now, so you can have some focus. So we're talking about 529 plan. It may not be halal, so we should try to avoid those. There is another one called Coverdell Education Savings Account, ESAs. It's similar to 529, but with lower contribution limits, which is like, I think, $2,000 a year. But it has broader qualified expense categories. It can cover private K-12 education in addition to higher education. So a lot of Muslims want to send their children to private schools, like you're sending it to here, Everest Academy and so on. 529 would not allow that, but Coverdell would allow that. And it gives you control over where you want to invest, so you can invest in Sharia compliant stocks, whatever account you open. You're not tied down by the state. You can invest in whatever you want. Another one is called custodial account, UGMA and UTMA. They allow you to invest for a minor, but there is no benefit in tax-wise. You just take away the money, that little bit of money, and put them so it can grow. And you control that money until they reach majority age, like 18 or 21. They have a lot of flexibility. It's like any brokerage account. Somebody said, why would I do that? Well, your children get money on Eid, on birthdays, and from grandparents or uncles for different occasions. We just tend to give it the money, buy more toys, buy more goodies, which they forget about. If they don't need something, put that away in at least a UGMA account, and it's their money, which they will get when they become an adult. So that's a great tool to invest that money for your child and let it grow Sharia compliant. Another interesting area is called custodial Roth IRA. Some children start working when they're teenagers, maybe 14, 15 years old. And they really, if they're living under in your house and so on, they don't need that money. They just gotta sit in their bank, or they will buy useless toys and stuff. Which they need something, of course, computer or whatever. But you can open a Roth IRA, which means they will pay tax up front, but then it grows, and they can't touch that money until they're almost 59 and a half, retirement age. So just imagine you put in $10,000 and it becomes $300,000, $400,000 by the time it keeps growing by the time the child gets to retirement age. That's a great tool if that fits your needs. And beyond that, just a regular brokerage account for teens. Some brokerage accounts allow, especially for teenagers, with limited, if you want them to learn about investing and play with the stock market and so on. When they come to a certain age, you can give them that and tell them to invest, or you can guide them. They don't have any tax advantage, but it gives the experience from a child. Maybe I know some of my friends who are kids are like 12-year-old. He said, I open an account for my son. so that he will, they know what they're buying, what things they are popular among their age group, and they will buy those stocks, and hopefully it'll grow. So that's another way you can invest for your children. But make sure they're getting into halal things. Oh, okay. Don't know what happened there. Okay. What are the options for adults? We've done to cover the children. Of course, you have interest-bearing account. You can go to a bank. You can have a savings account. Besides your checking account, you can CDs, money market. Those are all have interest. So try to avoid that as much as possible. You can buy Sharia-compliant stocks. I think about all the stocks, like 8,000 or how many tickers are available in the U.S. market, about 60-70% are Sharia compliant. So there are a lot of choices available, and typically those companies do better than if you look at the overall. There are mutual funds. If you don't want to deal with individual stocks and you don't want to make those decisions, you can buy mutual funds. There are a number of Sharia compliant halal funds that you can buy. There are ETFs that are coming out now. I'll give you a list in the middle of funds that are that are halal. There are sukuk funds. They always balance. If you go to a financial advisor, he will say, buy equity funds as well as bond fund fixed income. So you get regular income and they don't lose money, or it loses based on bond market a little bit. We can't have bonds because they are again interest bearing. There is Islamic alternative that are called sukuk, which are equity based investments, mostly available from Muslim countries. Even Britain has some sukuk now, but Turkey, Qatar, Malaysia, Pakistan, even I think. So we don't go and buy. You can, of course, some brokers allow that to you to buy individual sukuk, but they require large investment, like $200,000 one time to buy one company's bond or sukuk. So there are funds available in the U.S. market, which you can buy those something from those bond fund to balance out your portfolios. The market drops, you don't lose. If market goes down by 30%, of course you will go down, but you're not going to go down by 30, maybe 20, 25%. So kind of stabilize of course, on the growth side, it's also get affected because if it grows a lot, market, but sukuk fund will not grow as much. So there's a drawback, but to balance out your portfolio, you can do that. You can invest in real estate. It's okay as long as no interest involved. Don't borrow money to buy investment real estate. If you have cash, buy it with that, and so on. That's the recommendation, but again, it's up to you. We have retirement accounts, IRAs, Roth accounts, 401k, 403b, different things, and they have different things. And I mean, I'm in the financial business, so sometimes people call. Just today, I talked to a doctor. He said, "I don't know what IRA is." I said, "Okay, then let's have some time scheduled. I'll explain to you." He had a 401k from his job, so hopefully I'll be able to guide him how to do that. But oh no. What's that? Okay, most of the time they are not allowed because, again, the companies put together a package and you have only those choices. Now, you can lobby your company to say, let us buy something that we want. Some companies allow that. I was in Saudi Aramco, which is basically, again, based out of here. We worked with them for 10 years to allow at least one halal fund in it. I said, no, we only deal with Vanguard. I said, well, tell Vanguard to have some Palestinian and Syrian brothers who were with us. And after 10 years of work, they allowed one halal fund from Mana, which a lot of people are not even investing. They say, this is haram. Why should we go into that? But if you go to your HR, enough Muslims, that was our point. There are enough Muslims here, and they're not even investing. Why don't you allow that? And eventually, a few years back, they allowed that. They still offer at least one. They should offer more funds, but only one halal fund is available. So majority of cases, no, those funds are not. So in those cases, when people ask me, I said, invest in the most halal fund there is. Like if S&P 500 is available, just buy that, and then try to give the rest in charity and so on, because you have no other choice. Companies usually giving you a matching 5%, 8%, 9%. Don't give up on that. It's free money that's is part of your contract. So collect that, and then hopefully there'll be halal options available. So that well, that happens as far as I know when you quit your job or retire during employment. Okay. Okay, that I didn't know that, but yeah, that is an option that you can go to a company or go to a Sharia compliant. Okay, good. That good to know. So look for halal options as much as possible. But usually, most people I talk to, I mean, I tell them send me the fund that your company is listing. We'll give you some guidance what you can do. So that's how it is. Now, besides the retirement fund, companies have pensions. Yeah. Okay, that's what I just said. What you look at all the options that your company is offering, and choose the one that has the most halal. There are a screen. You can contact me. If it's a marketable security that's available. Some companies build their own baskets, and then you don't know what's inside them. But if it's a fidelity fund or something like that, then we can go online. There are tools available to tell you what percentage of that is halal or Sharia compliant, what is not. Then you can try to buy that. And like I said, may Allah forgive us for going no other choice. Scholars have not said, no, don't do 401k. They don't want you to get hurt by that. So buy it, invest in it, but try to be as halal as you can. That's all what we can do. Now, pensions, now some companies, it's disappearing slowly, but older companies offer that. It's a great thing. So when you leave, the company gives you a choice. Not all companies do. That either you take your pension lump sum, all of a sudden, could be several $1,000,000 sometimes, or you take an annuity. And I've had arguments with people. They said, oh, I'm getting a salary while I'm working. Annuity is another salary. Why don't I get it? So do you realize they're going to take that money, let's say for $2 million, they're going to invest in a CD or something like that, and they will give you money from there. So all the money that you're getting as an annuity every month is coming from interest. You have an option to do lump sum, take the lump sum, and then invest it. You can roll it over to an IRA and then invest it in a Sharia compliant way. So these are some of the options. Now, there are advisors available, different kind, different shapes. And services they offer is wealth management, which is, they will invest for you. They'll provide you consulting services. They will optimize portfolios. They will offer estate planning, wills and trust. We had a talk last week where we had an attorney here. She was talking about wills and trust. Most financial advisors will not do it. They will attach you to an attorney, or you can do it yourself if you're simple enough. An endowment, if you are fairly rich and you want to have a legacy and give money to charity later on once you're gone, and they can advise you on that. Some services are free. They just offer you online, or you can talk to them. Some will charge by the hour. It just depends what you're looking for and what kind of business you want to do. And if you know what you're doing, you don't need any advisors. But not everybody is in that category. So what are the various account types you can open as an adult? Well, there are individual accounts. Any person can go by himself or herself and go open an account. There are joint account, husband and wife, father and children, so on. So there is another signatory on it. There are retirement accounts and rollovers. There are IRA. Everybody know what IRA is? Because this morning I talked to a guy who didn't know what IRA was. Said, you need to come talk to me. Let's meet for coffee or something. I'll explain. He had a 401k. We said, I don't know. Of course, he was a doctor, so not much into finance. SEP IRA, which is self-employment. So if you are working as a contractor, again, one of the guys I know, he's a doctor, but emergency doctor. He's not employed by anybody, but he goes and does emergency shifts. So the option for them, since they don't have 401k or anything like that, so they call self-employment IRA. They can open an IRA as self-employer. 401k, of course, companies offer that. Health saving accounts, certain people can do that based on your income level and what kind of insurance you have. And also 51029, which I talked about. These are different kinds of accounts, and most brokerage companies who are dealing with stocks will offer all of these kind of accounts. Trust accounts, if you like Sidra talked about last week, if you once you established a trust, you can open an account as a trust. So when you go pass away, the trust will continue, and whatever you wrote in the trust, it will be distributed according to whatever was in the trust. So you can open the account not only in your name but also in the trust name, and that happens also. Family offices, that's another higher level. If somebody who's, I would say, $100 million or more, I don't think anybody here is that. So then then you take all your money and start a corporation with that. So it's not dependent on one person living or dying. The corporation continues, and then the shares get distributed according to whoever is surviving. But again, these are for very rich people, ultra net worth, ultra rich people, and there are people who specialize in that area. So, but you can open an account for a family office if you set up a corporation, and so on. Okay, oops, this page keeps coming back. Okay. This is a table which might be a little busy for you to read. I think the screen went away. Sorry, don't know what happened. What I have in front of me is the returns for different halal funds, and you can come and take a picture of that if you want later on, or I can send it to you. There are about 10, 12 funds that are available. Every year, 1 or 2 funds shows up. There are ETFs, there are mutual funds. They offer all kinds of, there are large funds, mid-cap funds, there are real estate funds, there are spook funds, and typically they do better than the market. The reason being, we don't invest in heavily leveraged companies, companies that are pretty much financed by debt. So equity-based companies are better. So they perform better. I don't know what happened. All these guys disappeared also. So this would be an interesting chart, but I can show you later if you want. So, and it's also on my website if you're interested. Now, different categories. How do you make your investment decision? Well, there are different kinds of stocks and tools. So any company that is larger than $10 billion is called a large cap. And usually they're stable companies and you don't think they're going to go away anytime soon. And they don't grow as much. Sometimes they do, but mostly their growth is slower. And they pay dividends and so on. There is mid-cap category, which is $2 million to $10 million. $2 billion to $10 billion. Those are a little bit, they're stable too, but not as good as the large cap. In the small cap, that's where the return is highest, under $2 billion. Then there is micro cap, which is 50 to 300 million, and non-cap, which is 50 million or less. Smaller the company, better chance of return, but higher risk also. These companies can fold overnight, and you can lose it, but also the returns are very good. Try something. We're working on it, so it give up. What do you want to do? Yeah, go ahead. This won't go in my computer. Yeah, because I have the display port. Yeah, you can plug it in there. Okay, we'll continue. You can resolve it. Okay. So these are I gave you categories of large cap, mid cap, small cap, micro cap, and so on. There are international stocks and emerging markets. Those are like overseas companies. Is there? Good. Thank you. Jazakallah khair. So there are international stocks like European and so on. And then emerging markets companies that are very small. Emerging markets like Middle East markets and some of the newer markets that are appearing. So those could be rewarding. Usually U.S. market is the best, but you need to have some exposure to the international markets also. They also divide funds between growth, things that are supposed to grow very fast, value, which means stocks that are lower priced than they should be, and there's better chance for them to grow. The income stock, the companies that are usually large and they pay dividends. So if you're later in your retirement years and you want to collect money from in dividends, those are called income stocks. So you can invest in those. Of course, there are sukuk, we talked about it, which is like a Islamic bond. Real estate, you can do it direct. You can buy homes or commercial or whatever. Or if you don't want to mess with fixing toilets, you can buy REITs, which is another like a stock thing. But these are large companies which invest in different real estate and give you a part of the return. So that is another instrument available to diversify from just having stocks. Then, if you go through if you go to a investment advisor, they will determine what is your risk profile. You can be conservative, moderate, aggressive, and so on, with subcategories within that. So if you're a young man, like in your 20s, just starting out, you should go as aggressive as possible because you have a long way to go to retire. Then there is moderate. If you're like 40 and 50 years old, getting close to retirement, you should be moderate. Conservative, you should be more in a stable funds because you don't want to lose too much. But then again, this is general advice, but typically, the smaller companies do very well. So the whole theory is changing that you don't need to follow this. You decide what risk level you can afford. Like if market drops 30%, what would you do? Would you take out the money? And there are horror stories, people who got scared in 2008, get out and never went back in the market. So of course they lost that 30%. But if there's those who say, I don't care, I'm going to stay invested because markets usually do go up. In 22, during all the Trump years, and even 21 was great years. Every year we were gaining like 30% or more. 22 was a disaster year. Everything went down. And then 23, we started going back up. Again, 23 was a banner year. So if you stay invested, eventually market will reward you. And there is no other instrument for passive income besides stock market. That's where you can make the money. Now, question, do I need an advisor? There's a lot of debate about that. I follow some forums. I say, you need it, you don't need it, you don't need to pay the fees. If you know how to select diversified funds and stocks, build and optimize a portfolio, you don't need an advisor. And I tell people that also. If you know what you're doing, you don't need an advisor. But you need an advisor if you want to seek higher returns and lower the risk, because they are professionals who can build portfolios for you. And you do not have the appetite to monitor markets every day. If you don't want to get on a computer, how is Dow doing, how is NASDAQ doing? Some people do that. But if you don't want to do that, you can give it to your advisor. But when you invest through advisor or you must buy an ETF or mutual fund, pay attention to expense ratios, which are usually attached to ETFs and mutual funds. They could be as low as 0.1%, as high as 2%. No, I'm sorry. ETF mutual fund now is at the most like 1%. But management fees also, the advisors charge, it could be as high as 2%, as high as 0.5%. So when you don't see it because it's being taken out of your account, just the market goes up and down, so you don't actually have to pay usually, but it's there. So for a smaller investor like 100,000, 200,000, it's not going to be that much money. When you got $1 million plus portfolio, you are paying a good amount of money for. So if you can do it yourself, but again, in the long run, the return that you will get will take care of the fees that you pay. But pay attention to the fees, what you are paying. Sometimes the advisor will charge you for the fee as well as mutual fund is charging. So you're paying double. So be careful when you do any of that. Now, something that we don't talk about Muslims because compound interest is like interest. We don't want to deal with it. But compounding is a concept which is just there. And if you know it, it works like magic. If you invested, if your growth rate is 10%, which is still typical of S&P 500, after 1 year, you would have 110%. After 2 years, 121%. A 10-year period will be worth 260%. So the number that I'm giving, like if you invested $100, what would it be worth? And if you invested for 30 years, say a lifetime of working, it'll be worth 1745% in 3 years span. Let me give you another more concrete example. $1,000 investment, growing at 10% with $100 every month. I think everybody can do that. Compounded monthly will be worth $23,000 in 10 years. Now just imagine how much you put in and what is it worth. Same investment will grow to $245,000 in 30 years. So, I mean, usually you will have more money to start with, and you will put in more money as your income grows. You can put in more money, and that's how you can sit comfortably in your retirement, do what you want to do. If you have a big nest egg, and you can educate your children about it, they should know how it works. So when they start their adult life, they don't have to. The schools don't teach you unless you have a finance course or something like that. So people have to know this. The fund, I give you an example of Amana Income Fund, which is one of the large Islamic funds. That has grown on the average about 10% for the last 10 years. Again, a $1,000 investment, $100 added monthly would have reached $23,000 in 10-year period, $245,000 in 30 years. It's the same thing, that example I gave. But there are ways to make more growth depending on how you invest. Of course, you take more risk. So don't forget the concept of compounding. Oops, it's going to the wrong one. What about taxes? Death and taxes are inevitable. You can't avoid taxes. So, but what we say is use every strategy available to you to reduce taxes. There's nothing illegal about it. So dig in and find out. I'm just going to list you some of the ways an investor, halal investor that is, can reduce their tax bill. First one I talked about earlier, Roth IRA, growth and withdrawal, the tax-free. So you put in $1,000, they will take tax away right away with you. But the thing is, it can grow to a big sum because when you want to take that money out, it has no tax on it. And people have done that. Like, I don't remember the name of the guy. In around 2008, he put some money in Roth IRA. By 2020, it was like $1 billion. That just by market growing, and he had no tax on it. So Roth is a great, but it may not work for everybody. Depends on the age, because if you have a big nest egg and you put some of that, or you put all of it, let's say you have $1 million, they say I want to put in Roth. They will take away like 40% right away if you're retired already. Would you want $1 million to go down to like $600,000? I don't know if you would do that. But you can start putting in a little bit at a time to grow that. The Roth is a great tool if you want to have a big chunk later on. Rest is about charities. Pay all charity to 501c because that's the only thing that's tax deductible. If you pay charity to a registered IRS registered charity, you will get tax write-off. You can also transfer appreciated stocks directly to charities. If you, if you invested in a stock, like say Amazon in the 90s, it was worth 700% what it was today. If you cash that out, then you're going to pay capital gains on it, first of all, and then so you will get taxed on it. If you give one Amazon stock, I don't know what it's worth today, $300 or something like that, you don't get taxed on it because it goes directly to charity. Plus you get a write-off. It's a double benefit. Just think about it. Donor advice funds, another thing. If you want to give it to charity, but you don't know who to give it to yet, you'll decide later. You can open the donor advice fund. It's another brokerage account. You put that in a halal fund. And so if you wanted to give, like, let's say you want to give $50,000 worth of stock, put it in DAF, give this year what you want to, use zakat and whatever. You can carry that on for the rest of your life and start giving from that. Whenever market is good, transfer that. Whatever, these are again appreciated stocks that you have, you don't want to pay any tax on it. If you don't need the money, put it in a DAF and it can be given to charity. Another thing is for people who are beyond 70 or something, I don't know what the age is now, 72 or something. You have a required minimum distribution. You have to take some money out every year, and IRS will tell you how much you need based on how much you have and how much is your life expectancy, and that gets taxed at full tax rate. So, but out of that, you can pay up to $100,000 directly from your retirement account to a charity. You can write them a check or transfer whatever, and that doesn't get taxed. So I think everybody who is at that age and you want to do that, give your zakat from that to a proper 501c charity, and that doesn't get taxed. It's a beautiful thing that we have available. Again, these are just some ideas. Consult a qualified tax accountant for these other tax. There are many other tax advantage. There are different trusts that you can establish and so on. And we don't have time to get into those right now. But one thing that we all deal with, home financing, is we all go for mortgage typically. A few years ago, maybe 30 years ago, there were no options available. But now there are, like, at least I know of 4 or 5 financial institutions which provide, and there are representatives all around the city. You will find them. There is Guidance is the most popular. There is Lariba. There is Divan Islamic Bank. There is University Islamic Finance. And usually, sometimes they're standing outside Friday prayer giving you flyers. So talk to them. They're very competitive. They're not like you paying too much in their what they call profit. Some people say, what's the difference? It's just like mortgage. Well, it's not. If you look into the contract, and there are scholars who are given fatwas on these, why is it halal and not halal? And each one has a little bit different, so whatever you're comfortable with, you can go with them. But that option exists. There is no reason for you to go to a commercial bank like Chase or something and take loan from them. Sometimes I know you don't have a choice, but try to avoid that. Insurance pretty much is impermissible because we do tawakkul on Allah, we rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But again, auto insurance, health insurance, occupational insurance, that is allowed because it's zarura. Sometimes it's legally required. Sometimes you're living in the country, you can't be, but life insurance should be avoided as much as possible. So that's about insurance. That's it. That's all I have. I know I covered a lot, but I didn't go into detail, but at least I hope that got some interest for you, things that you probably knew or something that you didn't know. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer them in the time we have. Anybody? Yeah. I could hardly hear you. Can anybody else heard him? What do you ask? Corporate. Yeah, okay. Anything that company is giving you, that is free from them. You're not paying into that. This is like a company benefit, like a pension. You don't pay into pension, but pension is given to you when you leave the company. So life insurance, if they cover you at no cost, don't pay for it. But if the company is giving you, that's just an employee benefit. I don't see anything wrong with that. So if you need it, they will give it to you. You have nothing to do with it. Same thing with pension. Pension funds are invested in interest-bearing accounts, but we don't have any control over it. I mean, when you leave, they are going to give you that money. Again, like I said, Prophet ﷺ dealt with Jews. And he said, you do your way, do interest, whatever. When it's in our control, we'll do it our way. And that's how most of the Islamic banks work. It's not like Islamic banks work in their isolation. They deal with commercial banks, but they draw contracts where the other party is doing whatever they do. But when it comes to Islamic bank, they deal with it themselves. So I think that's a medium ground that if they're giving you something for free, just take it. Nothing, you can't deny that I don't want it. Right? Yeah. With account? Okay, very good question. There are several services that are available. You typically cost $100, $200 a year. You can type in the symbol like IBM, and they will tell you it's halal or haram. Most of the time, just checking one company, I think it's free. They will not charge you for that. But if you want to dig deeper and build portfolios with them and so on, there is Zoya, there is Muslim Exchange out of Canada, there is Islamically, there is, these are things I can think of. There are many others. New ones are popping up. They do all kinds of screening for you. And some of them even let you invest directly. Once you determine, like say Microsoft is halal, You can even use them to connect you to a broker. And yeah, yeah, you can. Yeah, let me tell you what I do. I use several services because I'm in the business, but still I do it. But then I don't use their services. I go to my broker and buy. So I always check if it's a good stock. Second thing I do is make sure it's halal, and then I buy that share. Yeah, we covered that a few slides back. Let me see if I can get to it. If I can find that slide. Okay. So first thing you do, avoid haram businesses. Don't go to banks, insurance companies, gambling, pornography. If they're into that, that's you don't invest in those. That's pretty clear, right? And then again, scholars have done their qiyas, their analogy, and they said if the company is getting 5% or less in interest from their cash flow, those are okay. You can give charity 5% if you know, because otherwise you won't be able to invest in any stock. There is not any company in the world probably that is 100% interest free. Then there's an interest-bearing debt. They're not financed by loan. They're financed by equity, the money you use put in the company to do their business. So if they're more than 30% debt, that means they're just sold bonds and they're running their business with that. You don't want those companies. So these are guidelines that are published by international organizations that are always coming up with new guidelines. Those are available. Just search Islamic screening guidelines and you will find them. So this is how you do it. Sorry, back in the back. Just a minute.
Most of transnational companies like Amazon, Google, decentralization support Israel.
Okay.
How can it do this?
Okay. Both questions are very popular. Crypto, there are various opinions. The scholars in this country, since it's so common, they says, okay, you can invest in them. Overseas scholars who have wider view of things, the reason that the opinion that I like the most, they said that crypto is like paper currency. About 100 years ago, when the paper currencies became popular, scholars did not allow that. They said, we're used to dealing in gold. What is this paper currency? But then paper currency like dollars and pounds and rupee, whatever, reals, that became so common that you can't take a sack of gold and go buy a car with it, right? You have to give them paper currency or check or something. So they allowed that. This is now a means of exchange. Crypto is not quite there yet. They said we are neutral on it. If you want to deal with it, fine. But we just don't think you should be investing in those because once it becomes like you can, like I said, go buy a car, you can buy coffee. You can limited way you can do that, but it's not it's not as common. So I like that opinion. If you want to do a little bit on it, it's okay. But because scholars here have allowed that because it's so common here. In other countries, it's not as much. Now there are, for the Israel thing, it's again up to the individual. The most reasonable opinion I've seen is do where it will make an impact. A company that is primarily helping Israel, like Starbucks is a classic example. The whole Muslim world went against them, and they are suffering right now. If it can make an impact, Amazon, yes, if you can avoid it, why not? But if you don't buy, it's not going to make an impact on them. So try to avoid it. But we, like I said, like in the bank or something, we're all dependent on it. I try to buy things outside of Aramco, of Amazon, but sometimes you have no choice. So most of the people even on BDS, which is the buy card divest sanction, that is the Palestinian movement. They've been around for many years. And that's what they said. Choose 3-4 companies that will have an impact when you avoid those companies. So try to avoid those companies. But you can't go across the board, like you said. They're all donating to Israel. And that's the most common opinion. I like that. Try to avoid as much as possible, but it's not possible to avoid. Like, you can't avoid a bank. You can't avoid so many things. This is the word. I hope that. Not a good answer. I wish there was better, but this is what And there is, go to BDS website, and they have a lot of guidance. There are many websites now, but they are the oldest one and started by by Palestinians, and they have good guidance on that topic. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
There's certain Islamic banks now that are offering the equivalent of what I'll call a money market account.
Islamic banks are offering money market.
What I'm calling the equivalent of a money market. I mean, what you're saying is you're investing, you're going to get a fixed 4.5% return, and it's FDIC insured.
Okay.
I want your
Okay, I know some of them are offering. I have not invested with them. I'm thinking about it. My thing is, if the scholars have looked at there and they're saying it's what they're, as far as I understand, what they're saying is, we do business in halal ways. We don't do riba. We do murabaha and we do musharaka, and there are all these Islamic terms where we are partners in house financing and all that. So we generate money from there and we'll give you a return from that. As far as fixed interest, I don't know if they can do that. Nobody should be doing that. What they do apparently, like when the Islamic bank mortgage company gives you a rate, this profit rate, they're tying it to a bond index just for comparison, because there is no Islamic profit rate available yet. Because these things started like 20, 30 years ago, where commercial banks have been around for 400 years. So eventually we hope that a full Islamic index will evolve so we can tie it. So this is sort of comparison reason they give you, okay, we're going to give you 4.5% return.
my understanding of Islamic investments, there always has to be a risk of loss.
Yes.
In this case, if you're FDIC insured, I didn't understand how there's a risk of loss.
As far as I know, FDIC insured means your principal is insured. If the bank goes down for good, then like I said, I have not dealt with it, so I don't know. If you want to look into it, I think the best one is there's a Bank of Whittier out of California. They are the only Islamic bank, and they have a branch in Dallas also. Dr. Yahya Abdurrahman, I know him, met him personally. He's an Egyptian, I think, and I've had a personal meeting with him, and they're a proper bank. The most Islamic mortgage, they sell your contract to an outside company, and then you pay a big payment to them. So it becomes very close to an interest-bearing mortgage. But they said we keep everything ourselves and we do it. To me, it looked like the most halal. Again, what's that? Bank of Whittier, Whittier. Look it up. Lariba is their mortgage company, and Bank of Whittier is. You can even in Dallas, they have a branch also. I told him, why don't you open one in Houston? He said, I need $200 million in deposits. I said, I can't arrange that. So he came here and we had dinner together. So you can look into them, see what they have. They have accounts, and they're a national bank. They said anybody can open an account anywhere in the U.S., but they're based out of south of LA. Somebody had a question? Yes? Yeah. I didn't quite get it. Anybody else want to explain? Huh? Okay, again, it's like I said, many things we do is because of darura, that need. You need a credit card to operate in the economy. But try to avoid all those things. Don't be late on payments. Don't, or there are Islamic banks now which are offering credit cards. Like Bank of Whittier, I think, has one. So if you want to be clear of that, they have a different way of charging you. They don't charge you based on late payment. But try to avoid that. Only buy what you need and buy it and pay it off at the end of the month. I've done that for many, many years. Alhamdulillah, if you can do it. Huh? That's the key. Auto pay, exactly. They will take it out. So don't buy. If you don't have the money in the bank, don't buy it. It's just convenience to use it for. Okay, anybody else? Yes, sir.
Mortgage companies. Some of the, when I search for buying house, some of the Sharia, the mortgage companies, it seems like they don't call it interest, but when they send the paper, it says interest,
Okay.
and their fees are outstanding, lot more than regular banks.
Really? Well,
Take on that.
Okay, the reason they call interest so you can get a tax write-off. There, with your dealing again, like I said, what the non-Muslims do at their end will follow that to that. When it comes to our shop, we'll do it our way. That's the only way we can operate in a. This is how the whole world operates. As far as fees, you can negotiate with them. Now, I bought my first house from a Islamic bank out of California in 1987 or 88. There was no tax write-off, and those interest rates are very high. And if I calculate now, I think I was paying like 18% interest. Can you imagine paying 18%? That's what I calculated to be. But I was paying it because that was the only way to buy halal. There was as halal as you can get, but it was the bank didn't survive because their costs were too high. But you're talking about closing costs are too high. Yeah, closing, you negotiate on that. You tell them that, hey, look, Chase is giving me this. Why do I have to pay that? A lot of time they can accommodate. I mean, it's up for negotiation. Any points, any of those. My brother Kamal here is a real estate agent. He can probably explain. There is a way to negotiate with them on all those things. So they're not. I mean, I've besides once or twice, all the houses I bought are from Islamic banks, and usually they can accommodate if you show them that you're getting better. They're becoming very competitive. They know that people will go away to a interest-bearing account if you don't help them. So they're ready to negotiate.
They take the loan from the credit bank, and they say that's you don't need to know how to get the money. Is that
Okay, I wish I can explain, but the best I can say again, the example of the Prophet ﷺ, how the Jews got the money when they trade with them. I said, when it comes to our shop, okay, please.
These company guidance, they did a separate negotiation with these two companies, Freddie Mae
Yeah.
for several years, and their contract with these two companies is not the same as other mortgages. So there is a difference. And I'm not saying they are 100% Islamic, but it's not the same as getting mortgage from a bank. But there was a recent lecture by Sheikh Jasir Qazi, and he said that in his opinion, you can take for your own house from Islamic banks, but don't use it for business.
Commercial, okay.
Don't buy houses for business.
Yeah. Things are evolving all the time. Like I said, I've been trying to practice Islamic finance for last 30 plus years, and things are improving and things are happening is available. So again, one statement I always use, there is no IRS between you and Allah. Whatever you are at peace with, do it. If you're doubtful about it, stay out of it. Because all banks are trying. Some are very Islamic, some are trying to be Islamic. I mean, even I was in Saudi for many years. In Bahrain, there are many. Bahrain is considered the hub of Islamic banking. Some banks were run. The manager was Hindu, non-Muslim. How much commitment is this guy going to have for Islamic? He was told he was a graduate of the right university. Okay, you do all this for us. So, I mean, nothing wrong with it, but is he going to be really committed to doing business our way? But that's how. So just be careful on that. Yes, Mark. Okay. So, so that you're charging you more for the late payments, or well, they usually have clauses. What happens if you cannot make a payment and things like that. Assuming they take care of that. I think we have got a signal that we need to wrap up because they need to leave. If you have any questions, I can hang around for a little bit. I know it's a very deep topic, but Jazakallah khair for joining. I hope you learned something and I learned something from it. Yeah. Who want?
This presentation, can you put the name of the banks, those institutions that you talked
Okay.
about? Because you talked, that was a good presentation.
Yeah. Okay. The reason I did a similar presentation, a little bit different, about 2 years ago here. And I was told we are a 501c organization, this Masjid ISGH. You cannot advertise a company's name. So unless they buy the space, we are going to use your masjid.